Hello and welcome to episode 360 of the Stacey West Podcast. The 360 is where you do a massive about turn, and episode 360 I feel is going to be an about turn from episode 359. Somebody who's had a funny turn that's lasted him 2 weeks is Chris Lamming. He's here with us today. You might remember him. He used to be a host on here before he got struck down by the worst case of man flu anyone's ever heard of. So first of all, how are you now? And secondly, what the hell happened?
I'm much better than I was, thank you. Still not 100%, but significantly better than I was. I've just been really poorly, mate. Been really poorly. Whatever I had absolutely nobbled me. It was quite interesting, actually, because I've been outside for a couple of walks and things in the last 2 or 3 days. But yesterday at the game, that was quite literally the first time I'd had any sort of human interaction for a fortnight, and had a fan advisory board meeting before the game. So was there earlier than normal, so was walking up to the ground about 12:15 or so, and I went into the fan zone and got a coffee, which was my first human interaction of a fortnight. And the lovely lady said to me, what I now, after kind of trying to work it out in my head, what I now was quite a simple question of, would you like milk with your coffee? And I said, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, how are you? So yeah, and after realizing that probably wasn't the right answer to the question she asked, I worked out how to be human once again. But yes, I'm getting there now. Thank you. It's I've really missed this. I've missed just life, really, just been involved in the world. It's kind of passed me by for a couple of weeks, really. So it's nice to kind of get back into the swing of things, albeit, of course, off the back of a disappointing result. But how are you?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Yeah. Well, for those who didn't see me before the game yesterday, because if you did, I inevitably told you. But obviously, I had a 15-mile run before the game yesterday, and I had a little tumble, a little stumble in my training Thursday, Friday. So Thursday night, the boys came over to play pool, not you, because obviously you were still suffering from your flu. But I had Dave and Ed come over, and I got through 8 bottles of Estrella, and then did very little work on Friday, and then Friday night popped in the Ivy Club another 5 pints of Estrella. So Saturday night I didn't get an awful lot of sleep, and then I woke up Saturday morning and it's like, do you know what, I can either put it off for tomorrow or I can do it today. And there's some sort of quote or saying. I'm very good at the moment on Instagram about posting quotes on my stories, inspirational quotes for people to live by. There's one about, don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today, or blah blah blah. So I thought, I'm having it. So I smashed 2 bananas, half a pint of Barocca, a cup of tea, a pint of orange juice, and out I went. 15 miles. So it was a long old run, and my feet ache now, but I got personal bests in the what did I get? 10-mile personal best, 20k personal best, 15k I think, and half marathon. So yeah, half marathon in 2 hours and something like 3 or 4 minutes, I think. So I was quite impressed by that. But yeah, I ached a lot yesterday. I was so bad, Chris. I went in the corn dolly for breakfast after my run, and I left 2 rashers of bacon and a hash brown.
Well, that's not like you now, is it?
No, it's not like me at all. It's not like me at all. And do you know what? It's not been a great week, if I'm honest. Struggling with a few things, and you go to the football thinking, this is where I heal my hurts. The whole God is a DJ. I always used to think about Sincil Bank. This is my church. This is where I heal my hurts. But sometimes church is a hurtful place, isn't it? Certainly certain churches. And Sincil Bank was a hurtful and hateful place on Saturday. And as one person on Twitter, since blocked, put it, something about paint that in nice colours, you. And then he called us something that rhymed with, what do they do on the river at Cambridge? Punting. He called us punts or something like that. So hats off to you for your language, my friend. I love an articulate criticizer. But we're not going to try and paint it up in any way at all, are we? It was crap.
Yeah, it was. We can't pretend it wasn't. There's obviously quite a bit to talk about. Not anywhere near as much as usual, probably. But yeah, it was just a poor game. However, what I will say is, at no point up until Burton scored did I think that we'd be losing the game. At no point did I feel particularly concerned by them. I thought it was boring. I thought we were slow. I thought we were, just lacking a little bit of spark. But I thought we'd be leaving the game off the back of moaning about the fact it was boring and moaning about the fact that we're not looking, it looks a little bit leggy and things like that. I wasn't expecting at all at any point, even when the board went up to say there was 5 minutes added on at the end, I wasn't expecting to be leaving the game. Having lost the game, I was expecting to be walking back to the car, being a bit disappointed at the fact that we couldn't break down let's be honest, quite a poor Burton, albeit solid-ish Burton side. But you know what's most frustrating is that
just before you carry on, I did say we'd lose. I told everybody we'd lose. I met Gaz Nicholson there before the game. I predicted we'd lose 1-0. So I'm not going to say I didn't feel in any danger, because I genuinely thought we were going to lose the game from the podcast onwards. Now you can carry on.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I didn't know, and you mentioned that in the pub after the game yesterday, and that's a fair point. We have struggled against the teams down in the bottom four that, let's be honest, this squad was kind of built to be able to kind of suffocate those teams and play against them how we played, particularly against Cambridge away earlier in the season. I think that was a really good performance, which really showcased us at our best playing against teams that were worse than us. And since then, we just haven't been very good against those teams at all. And but I didn't think we'd lose. Not at any point did I think we'd lose. I just thought we would be frustrated at not winning, to be honest. But we didn't. When we did lose, and it was quite frustrating, wasn't it?
So let's talk setup 4-2-3-1. Some people mistakenly on Twitter saying we were 4-4-2 from the off. I want to ask a question before we start, because there's a guy sits near me. I'm not going to say exactly where because it might identify him, who just gets on my tits. And there was a comment about, we don't know what our best side is. He's 73 games in, he doesn't know what his best side is. Does changing the formation from one game to the next, and let's say bringing in Dom Jeffries instead of Rico Hackett, instead of starting Sam Klukas 1 week, not the next, starting Collins 1 week, not the next, is that a reflection of not knowing your best side?
I don't think it's a reflection of not knowing your best side at all. I think it's a reflection of managing players' loads. I think you made a point earlier in the season in that we haven't been particularly good when we've had 2 games in a week. We can probably dig slightly deeper into that, or the club can behind the scenes, and see if there's actually a real pattern there. But we're a team that try and play on the front foot. I appreciate off the back of yesterday's game, it's maybe difficult to remember that, but let's not forget that generally over the season, we're a team that is good at our possession. We're generally quite intense, so we try and close down quite aggressively. Ultimately, we play quite an energy-sapping style. It doesn't always work, and it didn't look like we played like that yesterday, in all honesty. But generally speaking, we play quite a high-intensity style. There's a lot of running required. Now, that means that players are going to get tired, and that means you're going to have to freshen things up. You're going to have to rotate the team around, and then also you're playing against 11 different players every match. So playing in exactly the same way doesn't work. It doesn't even work at the top level in the Premier League. Like, no one plays the same every single game. It just doesn't happen anymore. So a short answer to your question is no, I don't think it means that he doesn't know his best team. I still feel that there's maybe some uncertainty around what's the best way of playing in the style that we want to. I think you've got certain players who have developed over the last year who maybe off the back of giving them that exposure, you recognise that certain roles that they're playing maybe don't necessarily suit our preferred system. So you maybe change now and then. So maybe I'm kind of backtracking a little bit here, because I'm saying that means he doesn't know his best team. But I just don't think there is such thing as a best 11. I really don't think there is such one anymore. It is a squad game. And I think it's impossible to play the same every single match. If you play the same every single game, you're going to get beaten more often.
Were you happy with the team selection?
Yeah. Why wouldn't I be? The thing is, I trust the manager, and I appreciate maybe that isn't a generalized opinion these days, but I just do. And we don't know what happens behind the scenes. We don't know how people have trained. We don't know what knocks people have been carrying. It's very rare that you'll have 11 players on a football pitch that start the game that are completely fit. Most players are carrying something most of the time, and we just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm happy to trust the selection. I was happy to see us go back to a 3-5-2 shape, even though the personnel didn't change. When Zach Geacock went down with a Paul Farman style injury to allow us to reconfigure our system. And at that point, we changed back to our 3-5-2. And I think that suits this squad better. I think it suits our strengths better. Obviously, it didn't. We improved marginally at that point. It's difficult to kind of talk generally and then reflect back to how yesterday's game went, because I don't think yesterday's match was a particularly accurate reflection of the overall season. I think it was a bad game. But I think because let's be honest, we're not anywhere near the playoffs anymore. We're very unlikely to go down, albeit not safe yet. I think now is the sort of time that we can start to talk a little bit more generally and start a little bit more kind of bigger picture again in terms of the overall direction of the club. It's just difficult to do that off the back of a performance that was actually quite, I think, disaligned from both the pros and the cons of the team over the course of the season.
So let's pick up then the pertinent issues of the first half, and I'm going to go straight into one of the two. I'll toss a coin in my head to see what I'm going to moan about first. Let's moan about Burton Albion time wasting after 15 minutes. Now, I remember, do you know what? I've actually got a begrudging respect for what Burton did yesterday, because they come to Lincoln with a plan. Their plan is to break up play. The ball's not in play very often. It's set piece here. It's waste the time, frustrate the crowd. They are entitled to do that. Wickham did it to such good effect under Gareth Ainsworth in 2018. They were time wasting after 25 minutes. I think they got a 0-0 draw when they needed a point. Point wouldn't actually have been all that good for Burton yesterday in the grand scheme of things. But they are entitled entirely to do that, which leads me nicely on. And I'm 11 minutes in, and I'm not blaming him for us losing, but we wouldn't have lost if he had made different decisions. It leads us into Ruben Ricardo, the referee, because I genuinely thought he was absolutely terrible yesterday. Now, I'm not masking our performance. We were bad. I'm not hiding behind anything, but there's lots of different things that come together in order to make the overall story of a game. Like a film, the film is the acting, the casting, the sets, the storyline. It all combines to make a good or a bad film. And to make a good or a bad football game, you need an opponent, you need to be on it yourself, you need the crowd behind you, and you need the referee. Now, I'm going to pick up on a couple of little points, and then I'll let you come in, because I need to get it off my chest. First of all, you have to be consistent. Now, I know we're going to talk about something that happened in the second half, but some of the barges, like people say a shoulder barge is all right, but Chris, let me just ask you, just briefly, without going into too much detail at the minute, is running into a player deliberately without trying to get the ball from behind or from the side a foul or not?
Well, yes, of course it is. It's a foul.
Thank you. So when James Collins is going for a header and the boy Lofthouse comes and just smashes him in the back with no attempt to get the ball, that's a foul.
Yes.
So it's a penalty because I've watched it back and he's in the area. So it's a penalty.
To be honest, the discussion in the stands at the time was that's a foul, but I think it's outside the box. I think it's a free kick. If the kick was 10 yards further outside the box and it was like definitely just in the middle of the pitch, you get a free kick for it 99 times out of 100. It's the fact that it was on the line and maybe it would look contentious. But I agree with the ref. He was absolutely abysmal yesterday. And like you said, a bit of a begrudging respect for Burton. They came with a plan. I don't like it. I don't like playing 11 men behind the ball for 90 minutes, really. And it's more about the time wasting and the game management. And every set piece took half an hour, as you said, completely within their rights. And the fact they won the game justifies playing that way. And like I say, respect it, don't like it, because it absolutely ruins us. And, maybe lots of teams will start, or maybe have started, particularly at home. When we've been at home, teams have played like that against us because they know that we try and play high intensity football. We are better when there is chaos. We're not very good when the game's quite kind of, I suppose, set and settled. We're far better when there's a little bit of just madness happening and players out of possession and the ball kind of transitioning quite regularly. We've never been good at sustained possession, but we're good at certain things. And the way to stop that is by not allowing the game to get any rhythm at all. And they did that. What frustrated me is that the referee, not only did he not get hold of it, he kind of played a role in that as well. So a couple of moments really frustrated me in that regard. Number one, it's just a pet peeve, is that the refs kind of do a half-assed, and this is a general thing, but do a half-assed attempt to speed play up and then only book someone in the 85th minute when it's pointless and the game's already over. Like, And this is more not taking Lincoln City hat off, just from a football fan's perspective. We pay good money. You want to go and watch football. And I would love to know how long the ball was in play yesterday, because it didn't feel very long at all. There was a moment in the second half where a Burton player was down injured. We were waiting to, or they were, I think it was us, I'm not sure. But someone was waiting to make a couple of changes. And the subs were ready on the side of the pitch. And because this had been a kind of an ongoing thing, Joe and I had started timing every set piece on my watches. And there was a moment where a throw-in in the back there, the Burton right back position, took over a minute to be taken without a single request to hurry up. 1 minute and 2 seconds it was. And there was a moment where a Burton player was down injured. The referee was over with the player, and the physio came on. No issue with that, obviously. And there was 2 subs ready to go, like they were ready to go. And rather than getting the subs done while the player was down injured, so the game could carry on, the ref just stood with the player. He then hobbled off the pitch. And then the subs happened. And that's at the point where what happened is one of them walked off the pitch from the opposite side. And then the other one walked behind the goal. And it was just absolutely infuriating. And obviously it didn't help because we weren't playing very well. But we need pace in the game. And it's not the referee's job to keep the game moving quickly, particularly when one team is playing in a certain way. But it is their job to not make it worse, surely. So decision making just overall in terms of fouls was annoying. But it was this he just made the game worse in regard to it breaking up every two seconds and set pieces taking too long. And just quickly on the Collins foul, because there was 2 or 3 times where we went down, actually, I think quite softly, trying to win free kicks, and the ref didn't. Yeah, and there's a couple there, wasn't there? And I don't mind the refs not giving it. I was like, you know what, fair enough. He's tried to win. He's tried to kind of con the ref there. He's felt a little bit of contact and fallen over. There was one in the box that was never a penalty, but there's 2 or 3 others, and it wasn't just Ben House that were kind of on the touchline sort of areas. And I don't mind the refs not giving those. I really don't, because that lets the game continue. It sets a bit of a precedent, but it was inconsistent from that point, wasn't it? And it was just, we try our best not to be too scathing on referees, I think. I know we all have an opinion and we don't like them very much, but we have praised referees when they've had good games as well on this podcast this season a couple of times. And I think good point. And I think it's worth pointing out is that it wasn't the referee's fault that we were bad at football, but it absolutely had a role to play in making the overall game as bad as it was. Yeah, it
did. And again, I'm going to go back onto it, and I don't really care if people listening at home go and move on from the ref and tell us how shit we were, because that foul on James Collins is game-changing, and it's an absolute foul. The holding, which he was constantly allowing on Jova Makama, the holding and the pulling was all the way through the first half, which is ironic when you come to what happens in the second half, which we will do. His insistence at throw-ins being taken from the exact point that they went out, usually I would applaud, because it's one of my pet hates. But he was so inconsistent with a lot of his throw-ins, and actually against us, because I watched 3 Sean Rowan throw-ins where Sean's foot is 4 inches on the field of play when he throws the ball. And apparently they're not punishing that anymore. And it was just those glaring inconsistencies. And the time wasting was, if we were playing well and they were time wasting, you wouldn't really, well, they probably wouldn't be doing it as badly, but do you know what I mean? You wouldn't really mention it, but it just contributed overall to the game. So let's talk about the first half. I'm sure something happened. There was 2 real chances. Well, there was 2 chances for us. There was one where Jovans brought it down. Ben House is in probably a better position, but Jovans had an effort. Fair play. We want to see shots on goal. Personally, I think if he'd passed it to Ben House, Ben probably would have just gone down looking for the free kick, even if they want to play near him, because I have an issue with Ben House at the moment, which I'm going to come over to. Not an issue with him personally, but I'll come over to it. And then my man of the match, Sean Rowan, with a sterling run from whatever position on the field he decides to take up. Brilliant shot. Good shot just goes wide. Our only 2 chances. I just want to come on to Ben House because I mentioned it in my write-up. Beginning of the season, first choice striker. His name was on the team sheet. When he's injured, we look worse. What's happened? Because he's had a couple of good games recently because he's put a real good shift in. But he's becoming more of a workhorse. He's almost like a Scott Kerr version of a striker. Do you know what I mean? He does a hell of a lot of running and chasing and harassing, but actually on the ball, receiving the ball, delivering the ball. He's a great out of possession player, but we do have the ball sometimes, and you need to be a decent in possession player as well. Am I being too harsh, or do you think he's just dropped off?
I think he has. I think it hasn't helped his attacking output by playing deeper, because in the role that he started in yesterday, he's playing as a 10. He's playing as an attacking midfielder. When we changed to 3-5-2, he's playing even deeper as a wide 8. And so he's effectively playing, when we have Ethan Arahan fit, we were saying at the start of the season, you're going to have one kind of dribbly boy, normally a Jack Mullen or a Tom Bayliss, and then you've got a kind of, and then a workhorse kind of box-to-box player in Ethan Hamilton or Conor McGrandles, with Ethan sitting behind them. That was what our expectation was, and that's kind of how it transpired for the majority of the season. And what Ben was playing effectively was in that wide 8 position, the workhorse role. So you're not going to see the best of him in possession when he's playing in that role. I personally prefer him up front, and I prefer him playing from the front as a bit of a workhorse out of possession striker. However, I don't feel that we are pressing quite as aggressively or as high as we have at times last season, particularly at home. But you know why? Teams don't play out against us at home, so we can't do it as much, which is why maybe our home form, or one of the reasons I think our home form has struggled this year. I do think he has dropped off just generally a little bit in the last few weeks, but I don't think it's helped by the fact he's been playing deeper in that regard.
Okay, but it goes down a bit easily though, doesn't he? Looking to win a free kick. Well, for me, yesterday, it was the closest to Chris Maguire I've seen since he was sent away from Sincil Bank. And I like Ben House. I like his attitude. I like it when you talk to him. He's a nice guy. When he got his 15 goals, he was the fox in the box. But at the moment, it isn't particularly happening for him. And it wasn't the only one yesterday. James Collins didn't see a lot of the ball. He struggled. Conor McGrandles saw quite a bit of the ball. I felt that he struggled in possession at times. The only players for me I thought that had a huge amount of credit, or any credit at all yesterday, I thought Dom Jeffries looked good in the first half. Pordy O'Connor is Pordy, and Sean Rowan. Should we move on to the second half? Because the obvious talking point is our goal, in inverted commas, because it didn't stand. Moment of individual brilliance from Sam Clucas. We'll scurry over his free kick in the first half. Everybody thought, here we go, former Premier League player. And, I was parked in the multi-storey car park in town, and I had to check to see if my windscreen had been put through by it when I got back, because it was that far high and wide. But he just beats player after player, jinks into the area, lovely football, finishes. Jovan's punished for pulling the player down. Now, it's a foul. Jovan has fouled the defender. He's got hold of the shirt. He's pulled him over. The photos look worse than real time. You can slow it down. You can analyze it. As soon as you start doing anything like that, you can make it look worse or you can make it look better. My point is, if that's a foul, Jovan's been fouled 10 times himself already, inside and outside the area, and it's not been given. I can't argue that the goal should have stood because it is a foul, but for me, that is the massive asterisk next to the referee's name with inconsistency. Because on the field, there were worse fouls than that happening. Every single time the ball went in the air, there was barges, there was pushes, there was pulls, there was holds, but he punishes the one that costs us the goal. At the time, I had no idea what it was for. Watching it back, unfortunately, it is a foul. Can you defend it? I mean, where do you stand on it?
I agree with you. I think, I imagine every single person listening, in probably a rare occurrence, we would all agree on that, in that by the letter of the law, it is a foul. However, in actual real time football, you just don't see them given ever, but considering the consistency of the referee throughout the game. And not just in that game. I think if that happened in 9 games out of 10, it doesn't get given as a foul. And I think the fact that no one knew what it was given for in the stadium suggests as much, doesn't it? Because it was hardly an obvious issue. But again, by the letter of the law, it was a foul. So we can't complain about the referee making, I suppose, what by the letter of the law is a correct decision. But it was frustrating because I thought, finally we're finally going to have lift off now a little bit, and we're going to we're going to see a bit better, because ultimately that would change the game hugely, because how Burton played yesterday completely the whole system breaks down as soon as you concede a goal. So if we did score, the hardest part was going to score that first goal yesterday. That was always going to be the case against Burton Albion. And if that goes in with half an hour or so to play, I think we quite comfortably see the game out, because we can pick them off when they come out and we can manage the game. And just like we did against Mansfield, by the way, I thought we were really good at managing the game against Mansfield, particularly in the second half. It was a little bit open in the first, but ultimately we got the first goal and we saw the game out, and everyone came home feeling fantastic, by the way, on Tuesday night, didn't we? It was great result, decent performance. It was probably cold. Yeah, obviously I watched it from my sofa, so I was all right. But there was loads of positivity around the game on Tuesday, and it was slow. It was really slow yesterday, and there was some poor passing. I'm not going to pretend it was a good game, but I don't think it was a million miles away from how we played against Mansfield. The point I'm making is, if we go a goal up, we probably have a similar result. We probably have a similar style of performance for that last half an hour, and we all feel reasonably satisfied. So it changed the game massively, albeit being officially probably the correct decision. I think in terms of game state's a massive part of football that we don't, when we analyse it, is often missed out in. I think in a lot of talk, isn't it? Goals change games. They change how teams play. They change how players react. If that goes in and is allowed, as I'm going to say as it should be, because I think if you get fouls given like that across the pitch in every game, it stops every 20 seconds, and I wouldn't want to watch that sort of sport. Then the game's different, and I think we comfortably win the game from that point. But of course, it was chalked off, and we didn't.
More referee inconsistencies within seconds of each other. Pordy O'Connor is blatantly fouled on the edge of the area. He goes down, nothing's given. He gets up, then wins the header against the person that's fouled him and thrown him to the floor. I had a WhatsApp. The person shall remain nameless, but I did tell him that he comes out with some whoppers and have since ignored him. Please don't forget to mention the complete stupidity of O'Connor's booking. Now misses 2 games. The actions of somebody who should lose the captaincy. More the actions of somebody that was just it's all right. More just the actions of somebody who was absolutely frustrated with a wildly inconsistent refereeing game, or a stupid yellow card on a par with a Rahan at Bolton. Your call.
Well, obviously nowhere near the yellow card from a Rahan. It's allowed to be both, though, isn't it? It's allowed to be. He's human at the end of the day. He's as pissed off as we are. It's understandable for him to legitimately be fouled, then legitimately win the ball, and then get a yellow card for getting just incredibly frustrated at the referee, because he wants to win just as much as we do. He's probably as frustrated at the performance as we are. He's human, and we all get a bit frustrated from time to time. So, but of course, as the captain, you want him to set an example. So, should he have kept his mouth shut? Yes, of course he should. To lose the captaincy, I'm sorry, that is just absolutely ridiculous to suggest such a thing. I think Pordy O'Connor is one of the best captains we've had at this football club for a long time. He epitomises leadership, I think, on the football pitch. So, whoever that was, sorry, it's rare for me to be quite so scathing, but shut up. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Silly booking, but understandable. What is frustrating, of course, is that we're going to miss him for 2 games now, though, because that was his 10th of the season.
Yeah. And what are they? Barnsley and Birmingham?
Yeah, they're the 2 games. 2 away games against Barnsley and Birmingham. Barnsley and Crawley. Yes, of course. Oh, good.
Yeah. So then it's on to their goal, and it's their only shot on target in the entire game. Which they've taken their chance. Fair play. I've been saying this for quite a while now, that we don't concede many shots. Our problem is when we do concede shots, we concede goals. Potentially an error on Rico Hackett's part. Now it's interesting. The ball comes in. He's headed it down to their player. After the ball's gone in, Pordy seems to be saying to him, "Why didn't you head it out wide?" But there was a player heading out wide as well, so it would have still gone back to them, but it would have been as easy to recycle into a shot. On the radio, Jimmy Walker said he felt sorry for Rico Hackett because he's an attacker and therefore won't instinctively want him to know where to head the ball. You and I in the pub afterwards said he's a footballer, so he should know where to head the ball. But there's still work to do before the player scores. And it's like McGrandles at Leyton Orient. You can say he's given the ball away, but there's still work to do before the player scores. it's actually McGrandles doesn't make the tackle and then stands and watches the guy weaves further into the box. I seem to think O'Connor's in attendance, Hamilton's in attendance. They don't get a block in, and it's a good finish. What do you say?
A good finish. I can't criticise the attempt to win the ball back. There was a couple of last-ditch challenges trying to block the shot. I think was it Charlie Webster? I think former Chelsea player. A rare technical player in this Burton side. One of the ones that was recruited in the summer when they decided they wanted to play football, and of course lost every week and hired Gary Bowyer to stop playing football and try and stay up, which they're making a very good attempt at doing at the moment. But Webster is quite a technical player that's playing in a team that doesn't play technical football, but on a rare occasion where he had the opportunity to get the ball down and show some technical ability, I think he showed really good composure. And it was a good finish. Of course, shouldn't have got the ball in the first place. Poor header away. I'm not going to criticise the attempts to win it back. The lads were putting their bodies on the line to try and block the shot. It was good composure from the player. But it's just a bloody sucker punch, isn't it? Because, like I said right at the start of the podcast, not for a second did I expect us to lose the game. I expected to be walking back down Sincil Drain, complaining and being a little bit frustrated about the fact that we couldn't break down a team who were wasting time and had a particular game plan and we couldn't deal with it. And another 0-0 at home. I was not expecting to be going down the drain. Well, metaphorically as well as physically. So yeah, it was a bit of a gutting one, really. We haven't mentioned the second goal that was disallowed. That of course
was offside. I'm not even going.
But it was legitimately given as offside. So I don't think we can complain about that one too much. But I think we have had quite a few goals disallowed this season. Obviously, it's difficult. I don't think there is any stats I've seen out there that maybe top that sort of stuff up. But it feels like we've had quite a few disallowed. But hey, it is what it is. What I will say, actually, probably is not a huge amount more to say on Burton, is that one big difference on this match, I think, compared to Tuesday, is on Tuesday, the subs made a real difference and kind of really got us over the line and drove us forwards. And I don't think the subs helped in the same regard yesterday. I'm not saying that the subs were wrong. I think we all saw the game. There wasn't a lot happening. We needed something to change. Got no issues with the fact that it was changed at times, but it's just the fact that the players that came on the pitch didn't do any better than the ones that they were replacing, whereas on Tuesday they had an impact.
Did we have one disallowed on Tuesday night? I seem to think
we had two against Orient, didn't we?
Two against Orient. There was one where I thought Hackett scored. Was that Orient as well? Hackett scored, but James Collins was in front of the keeper. So I remember having a chat with Pete. I thought we did have one disallowed on Tuesday night, and Ben says yes, we did as well. So I think that we may have had 5 goals disallowed in. Yeah, Rico had one disallowed
3 matches.
Yeah, 5 goals disallowed in 3 matches, and probably, I mean, I thought the Mansfield one was fair enough. Probably there's only 1 or 2 of those where you can go, probably they may well have been given elsewhere. I think Pete. My mate Pete was really quite angry about the one against Mansfield because he felt VAR would have overturned it and allowed the goal. Quite.
What I will say on that is I would still prefer to be frustrated about the fact we've had goals disallowed, and debating whether it's correct or not, than having VAR in League One. Thank you very much. I would much rather be annoyed at refereeing decisions than have VAR and the frustrations that come with that. So, you can only complain so much, I suppose.
So at this point, we will take a break for those listening at home. And when we come back, we will be looking at 73 days of 2 managers and trying in some way to compare their records. But if you're watching online, let's go all the way back and have a look at some comments. There have been a few. Andy Brown says, evening, welcome back, Chris. Steve Freeston is on. Evening, Jen. Said Harrison is on. Evening, guys. Flossy Tops is on. Good evening, Chris. But then good evening, Gary, too. So thank you very much. Evening, lads. That is Ben. Evening, chaps. That is Steve Barton. As I say, so guys in the fan zone, I think it was. Nice to meet you guys. Chris, welcome back. Flossie says good evening to everybody, actually. So in the future, I've just noticed Flossie's picture there is female. For some reason, I always had this image of the previous Flossy Tops picture being a male. I don't know why. Sorry, Flossie. Roy Rogers, evening. evening flop. May as well just be her podcast. Andy Brown says, turgid. I am genuinely hoping that he means the football and not our podcast. Gaz Nicholson says, your prediction was right too. We know that. We've already seen it, but it never hurts to be told I'm right twice. Margaret says, welcome back. Chris Roy says, didn't get to the game yesterday. All I've seen on social media platforms is negativity from fans. Imps need, but it is negative. Chris Townsend makes a good point. Leighton Orient played twice in the week we played and we didn't and still lost. We're not saying that it's the playing twice in the week that's the issue. We're saying it's playing twice in the week for us that's the issue, something that they've got to sort. Roy Rogers, all I see from negativity from fans on social media, especially from yesterday's game, how could we turn a negative into a positive? Win. John Bates, evening, difficult day yesterday. What is our best system? Freddie was doing well and then dropped, which I think is more to get James Collins back inside, and Collins probably not wanting to play. They're not wanting to play him 2 games in a week. Dean Wagstaff, evening, fellas. Dean has some sort of plan, I think, to try and get me to run a marathon after the London Marathon, not immediately after, I'm hoping, but he can, and I'm going to hold my language back. No. The PGML are fast tracking that ref. I know where I'd be fast tracking him too. Jason Wright says, welcome back, Chris. And he says, even the extended highlights show swathes of time wasting.
They did.
Jared Fox wants to know if we're top for disallowed goals. House is constantly offside from Andy Imp. Shadow of his former self from Jason. Dom's online. Hello. Jacob is here as well. How are we doing? Keith's got a long point here, but we'll make it. We are where we deserve to be from all the games I've seen this season. We'll never progress any further with some of the players we have. Scoob's substitutions baffle me. The majority of the fans can't be wrong. Where was Ring and why take Sam off? In my opinion, we'll never progress with McGrandles, House and Hamilton in the team. We've got Jason saying one of the highlights there plays basically removes Jovan's shirt in the box. Andy Gray, interesting comments about Mansfield game. Yesterday was poor performance, poor result. Mansfield was a poor performance and a good result. Mark says, do we feel the team are overcoached? Too much not letting the players make their own decisions? I think they're making the wrong decisions.
I think I have an opinion on this. Answer, I think it's no. I think it's quite interesting. Obviously, quite fortunate to have watched training a couple of times. And what's really interesting to me is the information that's given to the team before the game about the opposition.
Chris, save this for the actual podcast. We'll ask this question when we come back.
Okay.
Gav says you don't take off our 2 most experienced players at the same time. Gav, you don't wear a jacket heated by battery power when it's 13 degrees, but you managed to do it, mate. He's literally got a jacket with an on button on it, and it runs off like a little, like one of these USB charger things, and it heats.
I'm not against that. Maybe not when it's 10 to 15 degrees like it was yesterday, but I'm not against staying warm when it's cold.
He's a grown man. Flossie apparently put her picture up to show that she wasn't a he. So I apologise. In this world, you never know whether you're being offensive or not. Hopefully, we haven't been offensive. It was just anyway. There we go. Definitely the game. Dean Wagstaff's laughing. So what we'll do is we will go back to the main podcast, and then we will ask Mark W's question. But I'm just padding because I like to do it on an even number, so I'm going to wait for 38:15 to bring it back in. Don't talk over it. Hello and welcome back to episode 360 of the Stacey West Podcast. You have just witnessed or missed a discussion, if you were not watching online, which was prompted by a question that we're going to ask and then let Chris loose on it for a moment. It was from Mark W, and he said, do we feel the team are overcoached? Too much not letting the players make their own decisions? And Chris started answering in his articulate and roundabout manner, and we will now let him do it for all of you driving or listening in or trying to get to sleep or whatever it is you do listening to the Stacey West Podcast.
I think it's a really good question, by the way. Really good question. And I think, obviously we're not there every day, but we have had a little bit of insight in regards to training. I personally found it absolutely fascinating. And there's a couple of things that really stood out to me that are relevant for this question. Number one is, I remember asking Michael about the information before games, like the tactical stuff about the opposition, like how do you put that across to players? How long does it take? And they say they try and do it in small bite-sized chunks, no more than 15 minutes, because players they tend to have the attention span for any more than that. And on the training ground, everything is planned so meticulously in a way that promotes how we play. But what I noticed when we went to watch training, and maybe there are elements that we haven't seen, of course, but what I noticed when we went is that at no point did Michael say to the players, right, we're doing this because, or in this situation, do this. In this situation, do this. The drills are put up in a situation to expose the players to those, I suppose, moments in the game or certain situations or elements of or phases of the game. And the idea is that the drills and the coaching off the back of the drills is there to help the players make the right decision in the moment when it appears on the pitch automatically. So what I've kind of got from this is that Michael's coaching style is very much not when the ball is here, you pass it there. When the ball is here, you pass it there. When this player has the ball, you run there. It's a lot more to try and allow the players to make those decisions on the pitch and give them kind of the foundations to be able to do that. What I would say is we have got a squad who is young. And with that, you get, just generally speaking, of course, we've got some experienced players as well, but generally we've got a young squad who, with that, you get inconsistency. And the players are not the best versions of themselves yet. And that comes from time, experience, and of course, coaching and playing. So my personal opinion on this is that with, of course, a reason and some evidence, is I don't think that they're overcoached at all. And if anyone's kind of thinking that the team look a bit restricted in their actions, I honestly don't think that is on the manager. I think that is on the players being able, honestly, having the technical ability to sometimes do what the manager is asking. Because when the opposition have the ball out of possession, we're generally over the course of the season, we're really good. When teams come on to us and we can, when teams want to play out and we can press high, we're really good. When teams come on to us and we can, this space for us to play into, I think we're all right. When teams let us have the ball, we're poor. I think that's a real weakness in our game. But let's not forget we've got the 19th highest budget in the league. You know, what changes when you go up the leagues? You know, the physical side of the game doesn't change massively, but the technical side of the game changes hugely. What do you pay for? You pay for technical ability. We've banked on players. There's one or two, of course, that got good technical ability, but I think we've banked on players who are good runners, physical, good engines on the whole, tactically aware, good out of possession. And the hope is that we could run over teams, I think. And we've seen it now and then this season, but not consistently. I suppose to add some balance to this, my opinion on the weakness of the team is we probably haven't quite got the technical ability to play in the final third how Michael wants us to play in the final third once we get there. I think we're getting there how we want to get there. I think we're getting there often enough. I think once we get there, we're not playing how Michael wants us to play. I don't think it's how they're being coached. I just think that's just the ability of the squad. I'll be quiet now.
Hair wax in my eye. So,
congratulations.
Because my hair was all over the place, and I'd done it before I came on, and then I've just rubbed my eyes. Now I've got like a hair wax in my eye. So still slightly less irritating than yesterday's game. So that's quite ironic. I take your points on board. I do think the element of the players making their own decisions is one of the reasons actually that we struggle at times, because I think we make some of the wrong decisions. And you and I were talking in the pub last night about the balls across the back when it comes across to one player and he controls it, rolls it to one side, looks up. You know where it's going. So if it's coming from left to right, it comes from the left-sided centre half to the centre half, and then it's going out to there, and then it's going out to there, and it's so slow. And sometimes it just needs to be a little bit punchier. I watched Sean Rowan really closely as well yesterday, because there was talk of him being worse when he was in front of our fans on this side, on the co-op side of the field, or whatever it's called, GBM stand, than when he's over in front of the dugouts because of the pressure. Actually, I didn't think that was the case yesterday, and I think he's probably one of the players actually that does move the ball a little bit faster at times as well. So I think that's quite interesting. Can I just also pick up on something from Adam here? Because he said signing the profile of players you've just alluded to doesn't align with playing possession-based football. Isn't playing possession-based football part of the model and a reason given for Kennedy losing his job? Now, I'm on the answer to this, if that's all right, because it's kind of, and I'm sure I've not seen Adams be critical before. This isn't directed at Adam at all. But there's a lot of people online who, one, are saying we shouldn't have the model. The coach should be allowed to play what type of football he wants to play. And then on the other side, we've got people saying, well, the model's the same people, not Adam stressing, absolutely not. But the same people are then saying, well, hang on, that's why Kennedy lost his job. Let's be really, really clear about why Mark Kennedy, or why I understand or I believe Mark Kennedy lost his job. It wasn't to do with possession-based football. It wasn't to do with results. It was purely and simply to do with things that were going on behind the scenes, the way people were being treated, fallouts, arguments, comments from Danny Mandroiu and Jovan the week before against Wolves. Mark Kennedy didn't lose his job for not playing possession-based football. Michael Horton tweeted out something along those lines, but it's certainly the style of football that Mark Kennedy was playing was never something that I have been told was a reason for him being fired, just to clarify. But again, it's this thing, the model, isn't it? Because it's so ambiguous, it can be, and again, this is Adam, it's just because you've asked the question, I'm not going for you. There are other people on social media where I'm thinking about this. There'll be people out there who will criticize the model and who we're signing and the way we're playing. But then when we're winning, they'll be criticizing the fact that we have a model and the manager can't do his own thing. And I don't know if that's something that the football club can help in some way, perhaps by trying to outline the fact that this model isn't as hard and fast as it sounds. And we are trying to give managers an option to play a different style of football, and all have, and we're going to come on to that. That's what we're meant to be talking about for the last 15 minutes, is the 73 days of Mark Kennedy and how they're different to Michael Skubala. And people tell me that nothing's changing, but actually everything changes. Appleton was different to Kennedy, and Kennedy's different to Skubala, and people at the club who are above the manager, like the director of football and the board, are not telling Michael Skubala how to play his football. He's playing the type of football to win games. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean I've gone off on one there.
No, it's a great point. I think it's a good questions here, though. It's like, I understand the frustration because you've obviously been receiving a little bit of stuff online, and it's a bit of a sensitive subject. But I think it's a valid point. It's a valid question, and I think there's a couple of things I want to say on the model and the style. Number one is, I think we all like to see the team have possession of the ball, but also let's not forget the amount of people that shout "get it bloody forward" whenever we have the ball at the back to go out the other side. So I think for when the glass is half full, it's always half empty from another part of the fan base, and I think you can never please everybody. I think in terms of our style, our aim is to try and play when we can, but we're very risk averse at the back, so we often hit long diagonals into certain areas of the pitch, and the aim is to try and play when we get in that final third of the pitch, and not against Burton, but generally speaking, I think we're okay when we do that. We try and play relatively fast football. But what we don't have in the centre of the pitch, other than Ethan Arahan, are those players that set the tempo. And you meant that point in terms of the ball goes back to Pordy, then out the other side. Absolutely no issue with that, by the way, because it allows you to change the angle of the attack. You're moving the opposition. But how that ball is passed, and I remember something. A coach called John Priestley, who was in the academy at Lincoln and also ran the football academy at the college. Just one little thing he said to me that always sticks in my mind is that your pass sends a message. So you haven't even got to open your mouth to tell a player what to do with the ball, but how you pass a ball. And this is where the intricacies are really important in football that you don't normally necessarily see in the moment. And on the Football Manager video game, there's a little trait that some players have called dictates tempo, and I've never knew what it was until maybe a year or two ago, and it makes total sense now. Ethan Arahan, by the way, is a perfect example of this. So the point you made about Pordy, and it's not Pordy specifically, this is just a generalised thing over the squad, is maybe that this is maybe League One in general. This is maybe one of the differences between the top end of the game and the level that we're playing at. But if you used to pass the ball to someone's right foot, for example, and they've got a player on their left side, like what that pass is telling you, not just passing the ball in their vicinity, you're specifically passing it to their foot. So you're telling them, without having to open your mouth, that the pace that you pass it with and the foot that you're passing it to dictates what their next step is. There was a pass yesterday, a rare one, where I think it was Pordy passed the ball out to Sean Rowan, but he passed it about 7 or 8 yards in front of Sean Rowan. So Sean had to step onto the ball. And then by doing that, he was then at kind of 3/4 sprint speed rather than with the ball dead at his feet. And he drove forward and we got an attack off the back of it. And that just came from the decision and the execution of the pass. It's not he passed it to Sean Rowan, it's how he passed it to Sean Rowan. And those little things there, that's kind of the difference, really. They're the intricacies in the game. And when it's tight and you're trying to break down those low blocks, which we've had to do more and more and more often this season, it's those sort of things that I don't think we're necessarily brilliant at. Ethan Arahan is outstanding at that. He absolutely leads on that, and I think we're massively missing him in that regard. And it's interesting because Flossie Tots have put an interesting comment here, which he says, so in other words, we need a bigger budget. And yeah, I think that would solve the problem, but also the club are losing £3 million a year, so we all want to have a football club to support. So how do you play in a way that allows you to punch above your budget? And that's what the club did in pre-season. What other clubs have had successful campaigns in League One? How did they do it when they performed +5, +6, +7 above their budget? Now, at the time, we didn't realise that our budget was 19th. We thought it maybe was 12th to 14th. But ultimately, the aim is to try and outperform your budget. And you do that in a way by playing to certain strengths and playing in certain styles through evidence of how teams that have done well in this league and done it before. That's why we play how we do, and that's part of it. That's the level of thought that goes into this at the football club. It's not just kick it in a certain area of the pitch and hope for the best. So there, I've talked far. I've made it up for lost time today, aren't I? And Andy's made a good point here. We are still punching above our budget, but that's not a way of. That's not a way of defending yesterday's performance. Of course, I think that's worth mentioning.
What I want to pick up on, and we'll park the 73 game thing, because I don't mind. I want the people who come on here and try and engage properly, rather than just calling us punts. I think that was what they called us on social media. I'm happy to. And Joe Cates has made a point. Now, first of all, I'll just clarify, I haven't made the excuse for youth, by the way. But he says, make an excuse for every young squad for performances. Our team yesterday, and he runs through the ages, and you've got 37-year-old Jackson, 27-year-old Connor, 33-year-old Dariqua, 34-year-old Clucas, 29-year-old McGrandles, 34-year-old Collins, House at 25, Rowan at 21, over 100 games. Jeffrey's 22, over 100 games. Makama 21. And he's looks more experienced than young. I'm not making any excuses for youth being the fault at yesterday. Yesterday, we were crap. We didn't play well. I don't think we have been turning in poor performances on a regular basis. I think we were average against Mansfield. I think we were better against Leyton Orient. I thought in spells against Cambridge, we were okay. I think there are one or two players on that list, if I'm honest, that I just not they were. My point I've made in my blogs is we've got too many players who don't turn up for 90% of the games. They'll turn up for 70% of the games. And when you have a team of 11 or a squad of 16, I mean, it's harder for the subs, to be fair, yesterday, but the subs, Hackett, Bayliss and Hamilton all came on and did literally nothing. They didn't affect the game, but we did on Saturday. I'm looking at our team yesterday, and I'm going to say Dariqua, McGrandles, Collins, House. I'm going to say Clucas. People have this romanticised idea that Sam Clucas ran the game yesterday and should never have gone off. He was all right, but I don't think they were particularly strong. I think O'Connor had a decent game. I think Jackson was all right. I think Jeffries had a decent game. I thought Rowan was our man of the match. Other than that, we just didn't have enough players turn up. It's as simple as that. And we're making the wrong decisions in key areas in these games. But for the grace of God, we win yesterday's game or Saturday's game because we get the goal, the Clucas goal given, or we get the penalty on Collins, and they're key incidents. But every single week, we can't come on the podcast, as we are doing, and saying there are key decisions or key moments every week that are changing games. There are. Leyton Orient, there was 3 individual mistakes cost us goals. We had 2 goals rolled out. One was possibly onside. We're not a million miles away, but then games like Saturday do show us to be a million miles away. Going on about budget, quite rightly, is something that bores a lot of people, unfortunately. But it is fact. We are 19th in the budget table, and you have to stretch that to a certain point. +5 is industry accepted as a success. So if you're 19th in the budget table and you finish 15th, that is classed in the industry as success. You all you watching at home, you have your own industries, and you know what is classed for success for you. I used to work in kitchen sales for Howdens, and our level of success was how much money we made on sales. And you had a barometer and I don't mind saying it because Howdens don't owe me anything anymore. You had to make 40% margin. So whatever we were selling had to make us 40% on what it had cost us. That was the margin. If you were above that, the more you were above that, the better you were. The lower you were under that, the worse you were. That was our industry standard. The industry standard in football is if you're 19th in the budget table and you finish 14th or you finish 15th or you finish 12th, then that's success. But success doesn't look like that for supporters, because for supporters, there's only one team that matters, and that's Lincoln City. The other 23 teams are, as I've said a million times around, they're the Austin Powers henchmen that come walking up to be slapped away. Some of them, like Birmingham City, are a hell of a lot bigger than others, like Burton Albion. Fact here, Burton Albion have got a bigger budget than us. Cambridge United haven't. There were still two teams we should have beaten, and they're two teams we've taken 1 point from 5 away. So I think that's the point. Is the budget argument is absolutely fine to have when we're playing teams that are better than us. Burton Albion weren't better than us. We lost the game because we weren't good enough, not because we were young, not because we're old, not because we did. Like Jimmy Walker bizarrely on the radio said that we had this lopsided formation that didn't really work, and then 5 minutes later said we set up absolutely ideally. We just lost it because we didn't do the right things in the right moments. And Enjoy Your Fishing, to be fair to him, says, I think the frustration is we've seen he was called Keith earlier, wasn't he? I think the frustration is we've seen too many games like that at home this season. My first league game was 1967, and this is the most consistent we've been in League One. And the fact is, come May, we'll still be in League One and we'll be going again, and it'll be the longest period we've had in the third tier of English football in our history. And people are saying they're not going to renew their season ticket. Oh my God. I mean, don't renew your season ticket because it goes up, because of personal circumstances, by all means. But if you're not renewing your season ticket because you don't think that being 12th, 13th, 14th in League One is good, where were you 20 years ago? And this isn't me saying we were non-league, we were League Two, we were this, we were that. But honestly, oh my Lord, we support a League One side that we're not in any serious danger of relegation. It's not always brilliant, but I can understand people not wanting to renew their season ticket, but when they're using it as a weapon to beat the football club to say we're not progressing, when do you know what? I'm just
I think it's two things, really. I think number one is a lot of the things that particularly I've been talking about today have probably been a bit generalised for the season overall, rather than yesterday's game, because I don't want to massive fact. Yesterday's game was poor. We played poorly. But I also don't think it's an accurate representation of generally how we've played this season as an average. Now, there are loads of things that we don't do very well. There are some things that we do really well. There are strengths and weaknesses in our squad, just like there are at every other club around the country. I suppose a lot of the points I was making were more generalised rather than the Burton game, because the Burton game was crap and we didn't have a lot to talk about. But in regard to the model and the youngsters, I think even with the signs we made in January, our squad is still the third youngest in League One. And it doesn't justify yesterday. We named all those experienced players yesterday. But the point I'm making, just generally speaking, is younger players are less consistent generally. But we can't afford, and I'm talking back to budget again, we can't afford to go and buy someone who is in their prime age that's the best that they're going to be and they're going to stay there for 5 years. We can't afford to do that and to still have a football club to support in the next 3 or 4 years' time without going bust. Can't do that. So and I think Paulie is a prime example. He was out of contract he was a League Two, a mid-table, a high-performing ultimately, but a mid-table League Two centre-back. And we brought him in on a free transfer, and his current wage that he's got 3 years down the line will reflect the player he was when he signed. So I don't know what Paulie's on, but he's certainly worth more than that now as an average salary for the quality player he is now, compared to where he started. But that's a benefit to us because we've been able to have a player of his ability, but we're probably getting a lot of a bang for our buck in that regard. That's the benefit on the pitch you get from signing younger players. You know, Paulie was 24, I think, when we signed him, and he was probably the older part of the type of signings that we've been bringing in, generally speaking. But you're kind of playing ultimately this time in 2 years' time. The hope is, and they're not all going to work out, but the hope is you have quite a few players in the team who are on the wages that they are on now, brought in as high-performing League One, League Two players, like a JJ McKiernan, for example. But they're performing on the pitch at a level of a playoff chasing top half League One player. And that's how you compete. That's why the model is what it is. on the pitch. It's not just about making money off it. That's how you compete on it. So I'm always going to stoically back that, not just for Lincoln City. I think that's a good way of operating any lower league football club that hasn't got the biggest budget in the league. And in regard to just season tickets and supporting your club in general, we all like to see good football, don't we? But I don't think any of us really support Lincoln City because we expect the actual football to be brilliant all the time, do we? Like that's not what you actually go to football for, is it? It's to feel part of something that's bigger than yourself. It's to get an escape from real life. It's something that is for me. That's why I go to football. I want us to win. I want us to do well. I'm very passionate about that, of course. But I don't expect us to be brilliant every week because it's a League One football club. No one's brilliant every week. It's not high quality football. If all I was interested in watching was high quality football, I'd watch the Premier League, and I don't because I've got not a lot of interest in football being a TV show. So yeah, everyone has their own reasons for watching football, but I think the majority of lower league supporters probably understand that it's easy to support a winning team. It's not quite so easy to support a team when they're in a rough patch, but you still support your team, don't you? At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'm not saying people who give up their season tickets are not going to support their team. By the way, some people do it for financial reasons. I understand that. I'm not being critical of anybody giving up the season ticket. I'm being critical of having to make the statement that it's not good enough, so I'm going to give up my season ticket. That's what I'm being critical of. Just to pull you up on one thing, believe it or not, we're actually the 7th youngest squad in League One now.
It may well have been before the January window was closed when I checked that. Then maybe.
So Mansfield,
the point still stands for the majority of the season.
Mansfield have the oldest. It's Peterborough on 23.1, Reading 24, Burton 24.5, Wigan 24.6, Crawley 25. Then you've got Orient 25. Well, you don't really need to know, but we are just between Barnsley and Bristol Rovers. It's an interesting because the total market value on Transfer Market, and I'll be honest, I don't put a lot of value usually in Transfer Market, that actually has us 18th in total market value, which does reflect the club's 19th position in terms of budget. And I often get asked, where does this budget come from? How are we ascertaining we're 19th in the budget table? All of the clubs have to submit data to the FA or the EFL as to what their budget is. And then the EFL send that back out to football clubs, and football clubs do with that what they can. They cannot publish that because they can't publish anybody else's data, but they can say where they are in the budget table, and they can release their own budget. People will say, oh, well, I've got an agenda. I've been fortunate enough to see that budget table. I can't remember who was where other than us being 19th. There was a talk about who's usually in our cohort. And it's usually, whoever's 3 above you and 3 below you, that's your cohort. They're the teams that you want to be beating, and then anyone else below you. But as we've said, we've not been beating the teams below us. That's hard, pure fact. That's what Michael Skubala's got to get right. He said to you and I in a podcast, I believe, or maybe just a meeting that we didn't record, earlier in the season, if you beat all 6 teams in the bottom 6, home and away, you've got 40 odd points or whatever, and then you only need to win another 10 or 12. You only need to win 10 games in the playoffs. Harsh fact is, we haven't done that. We haven't beaten those teams.
Yep. That's been the biggest weakness for me this season, is we haven't beaten the teams that we should have. So let's just take some of them, just the recent ones. So we've obviously the recent 4 games against the teams that are currently in the bottom 4. Burton obviously lost yesterday. Cambridge 1-1. Shrewsbury lost 1-0 over the Christmas period. And then, of course, we had the freak result that we lost 3-0 away at Crawley. Let's say the freak result stands, because freak results happen in football. Let's imagine we did win those 3 games that we didn't win, though, the most recent 3. So Shrewsbury, Cambridge and Burton. That's 8 points extra. That puts us on 51, 2 points away from the playoffs. Everyone's happy that's pretty much where we feel we should be. That's what we all said pre-season, before we had any knowledge of the budget table, because that doesn't come out until just before Christmas. No clubs know where they actually stand on the budget table until about Christmas time. But without that knowledge, we thought we were probably mid-table budget. We thought we had a squad good enough to be in the top half. That's what we thought. And we'd be exactly there if we'd done what we expected to by beating the teams that are below us in the table, both tables. And we haven't done that as well as we should. And that's the weakness. The other stuff isn't. That's the big difference this season, is we haven't been good enough against the poorer teams.
Yeah. Well, looking at my numbers, we were about 4 minutes on our break, so we're coming up to the hour. I've negged myself out. That's youth speak for negativity. Did you know that?
Didn't know that. No, I didn't.
Negging on somebody is giving them negative opinions or making them feel negative about themselves. Negging. I'm learning some new language. I watched Bear Grylls Bear Pit thing. I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
And there was two blokes on there, Cola and I don't know, some rapper, but they were doing some of the youth speak. So, like if you're arguing with someone and you want to say, look, it's okay, I'm going to walk away, you can just say it's calm. It's calm. Did you know that? I'm going to start using that. So people
please don't. No.
Yeah. Look, can you see that I'm shining because I've started using moisturizer so people think I'm younger than I am? I wonder if I should get Botox. What do you reckon? I've had these train lines on my forehead. People can see them online. If I do that, I've had those ever since I was a kid. And I just wonder if I should get some Botox. My mate Jay got Botox. Can't frown, can't smile. His face just looks like putty, like rubber putty. Anyway.
Well, surely that means then no, don't get it then.
Yeah. So that's episode 360. I would just like to plug my London Marathon efforts again, if I may. I do keep mentioning it. I'm going to put a link right now in the comments section for those who would like to donate. Thank you to the chap that came and donated on Saturday. That link says that I am up to 2,227, but some of my donations have gone straight onto the foundation, so it's 2,468. In the coming week or two, I am going to be releasing the raffle to raise some more money. I've got some cracking prizes. So I've got a signed Former Players Association shirt. I have got a full signed squad shirt here. So those of you who are listening won't be able to see this, but it's I think it's last season's away shirt or third shirt. That's all squad signed. So they've both been generously donated by Gavin Gordon and the Former Players Association. I've got a limited edition gin box donated by B. We've got a signed Imp Tunes drawing, which is signed just this week by the squad. That's obviously been donated by Chris Ray, who all he does is colour in, but he gets the players to sign it, so that adds value. So I'm going to get a couple of other raffle prizes and things done, so that'll be going out soon. Raffle tickets, all money will go to, well, once PayPal have taken their chunk, all the money will go to the foundation. I'm hoping to get closer to 4,000 now, because honestly,
wow.
I've got like 16-mile runs coming up and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. That guy in the pub last night couldn't believe it, could he? He was like, how many steps have you done? Like 35,000. He goes, I don't drive that bloody far. So there we go. That's the Stacey West podcast. We've gone completely off-piste to try and answer some of the, not criticism, but some of the comments that people had that are presented in the right way. We do not have an agenda on this podcast. We have our opinions. We're willing to listen to your opinions and we're willing to discuss them, but we're not willing to discuss them if you just give us vile abuse on social media. Just block you. And if you think that is to the detriment of free speech, you're as thick as a whale omelette. We've had a really good time. Thank you very much for coming along. We will be back in midweek. It won't be me, but it will probably be Chris and Ben or Chris and Charlie, and they'll be talking about our trip to Barnsley next week and whatever news comes up. But in the meantime, wherever you are, remember, we are all imps. We all support the same football team. Be nice to each other, be kind to each other, and if you can't do either, shut the fuck up and get off social media. Up the imps.
Up the imps.